of all, I would like to thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity to share my views on Bhagavad Gita with you all, with this learned audience. And especially, I would like to thank Dr. Paltu Datta and Pawan Sethi ji for making it possible. And what I would like to say that present paper or like kind of the piece is a kind of a work in progress, and it's a part of the research project which I'm pursuing with the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore, and where we are trying to show how body is actually central to the experience and the notion of well-being, especially with the perspective of Kashmiri Shaivism and uh, and the artificial intelligence. So basically, I would like to tell the learned audience that why I have chosen this title, like why I have titled as the body and mental being in Bhagavad Gita, and I have done because of the methodological reasons, and which I hope to develop and explicate in this brief talk. Gita's place, as we all know, that is a unique in the richest text. And it is not like a hackneyed statement, because why it is a unique? Because philosophy, Gita's philosophy is not based on like the metaphysical beliefs or certain kind of the theological doctrine, but it starts or is based on the experience, which is like the hallmark of all kind of the major ground breaking works, and especially the experiences which we all go through in our life. So in a way, Gita's approach, what we can call as it is a kind of the existential approach, because it builds on the psychological and the embodied experience we have as a being in the world, and from there it gradually builds the metaphysical doctrines, and so that is why experience is kind of very central to Gita's philosophy. So good thing with Gita is that even a non-believer can be interested and analyze and find it useful, because it doesn't require certain kind of the prerequisites or certain kind of the beliefs in order to make sense of. Now, and what I'm going to do in this talk, that I would like to develop the notion of the everyday experience we all have, which is called as the bodily feeling we all have. And how do we understand body philosophically? So one way of understanding body, the major way of understanding the body philosophically is what we call as the Cartesian dualism, which originated in the philosophy of René Descartes, which is as simple as that there is a duality between the body and mind. So body is like an inert, extended substance, extended into the space, while thinking is the attribute of mind. Like we cannot think of any body which is not extended into the space. It is a contradiction in term. And we cannot think of, according to Descartes, mind which is not thinking, because to pose the unthinking mind also requires the thinking. So by which he divided, he gave the two kind of the substances, body and the mind. However, this is challenged very recently in the phenomenology and by the cognitive sciences, especially in the work of the Francis Varela and Damasio, which gives the critique of the mind-body dualism. And rather they come up with the notion of the lived body or the habits. So argument is that we cannot consider body as the inert thing, because body is something which all the time internalizes the experiences and give us orientation in the world. So so whenever we approach any kind of the space, we before approaching it mathematically or geometrically, we approach the space in terms of our body, like it is like left to my body or right to my body, or this is up, down, far, or near, and the attractions come later. So there are many kind of the experiment where you changes the places or the things around the person, and the person immediately feel the disorientation. And this disorientation is result of because he is not able to orient the body, because body is the base, or it is the zero ground on the basis of which we orient the world. Now, what they actually argues, phenomenology, and that our relationship with the world is based on this tacit implicit knowledge rather than the explicit knowledge in terms of the proposition. One thing is that there is a stupid subject which is facing the objective word, and it gained the understanding of the word in terms of the proposition, knowledge, statements. Now they say this is not kind of the relationship with we have with the word. Rather, we already have certain kind of the intuitive understanding of the word. So even a child who is born, he can orient itself in the word on the basis of this previous knowledge. So this background knowledge, this implicit understanding is something on the basis of which we interpret and project the word around us. And one very kind of like we all experience actually this during the pandemic, especially during the lockdown. So a lot of the people, there was a certain kind of there are many kind of the studies that people face like the anxiety, stress and disorientation, because the way their body because the habits of the body was disturbed, because the people used to meet, shake the hand, go about in the world. So that has been all this, the body has already learned. There was a habit body and there was kind of the disorientation between the what the people have learned and the actual word. So there is the kind of the disharmony which took a lot of time in the adjustment and the adaptation. And there is also a notion of the body, that body is not something which is inert, but it has got the dual sensation, that when a body touches something, it not only touches, but it also get touched. So especially in the meditation techniques of Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, we find more kind of the meditation which employs the bodies and the various kind of the body techniques, which leads to what the Kashmiri Shaivism call as the Pradabhikya, the doctrine of recognition, realizing one's unity with Shiva. So in Gita, we also find that there is a kind of the phenomenological interpretation of the body. And body is not something which is considered in the Cartesian tradition as the dual. There is not kind of the duality in the body. Like body is something inert and there is kind of the negligence of body, and you have to create only the life of the contemplation or life of the mind. Rather in Gita, we find there is a lot of emphasis on the moderation, yukta ahar vihar, and such a kind of the life leads to what is called as the manha prasadam, happiness of mind, which ends all dukkha and suffering. And especially in chapter 17, Gita talks about the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic kind of the behaviors, foods, and activities, and the kind of the impact which it has on us. So we show that the Gita is extremely meticulous of our understanding and the experience, especially the way we eat, speak, and think. Now, Gita does not ignore the so what it shows that Gita does not ignore the body and asks us to live the life of the pure mind. So that is the Gita difference between the Christian and life of the rational tradition, that it does not ignore the body altogether and just attempt to live the life of the pure contemplation. Rather, it encompasses the bodily well-being and how one establishes the one's harmonious relationship with the body. And that is why having the experience of having the sattvic body is altogether different from having the rasic and tamasic body. So the idea of body in Gita is basically phenomenological, that is based on the experience, which interprets body as already having a connection with the world. And body is in the realm of the Prakriti, so it will naturally have the connection with the Sattva, Rajas, or Tamas kind of the guna. So there is no way the body can escape this gunas, because it is in the realm of Prakriti, then naturally it will have the relationship with this Triguna, all the three kinds of the guna. But at the same time, one's relationship and the experience with body will be different on the basis of the gunas which one is having. A sattvic body or the sattvic person will have a different relationship and the experience of the body the way the rasic and tamasic person will have. Now, what is what is get to do with like the moral reasoning, this notion of the body? So what I am going to criticize is that the dominant interpretation of Gita is basically based on the comparison with more the rule-based Kantian ethics, which is like the duty for duty's sake, karmanya devadhikarastu, which is basically known as the deontological ethics. That the moral act of the worth of any moral act is basically dependent not on the consequence or result, but on the intention. So this is also a fair or not altogether wrong interpretation of Gita, but it is kind of having based on the rationalist interpretation of Gita. On the other hand, what we are going to argue that if we hermeneutically interpret Gita, it will suggest that Gita also promotes what is called as the virtue ethics. And what virtue ethics basically argue that we pursue the moral life because we all want excellence and happiness in the life. And we engage in the moral life because we want because it leads to the life of excellence, and life of excellence and the happiness lies in the moderation. Hence, moral life is not about applying the abstract rules on the various contexts of the life. Rather, it's about becoming a more and more harmonious with the situation and the people around us. So one standard way is that suppose if there is a crisis, so we get the rules right, we should have the manual of the rules. And if some crisis happen, we can automatically apply that rule so that we can overcome with the crisis. On the other hand, cognitive sciences, phenomenology, and Aristotle, they talks about what we call as the phronosis, practical wisdom. So this practical wisdom is that there are no kind of the previous abstract rule which we can apply in all kind of the situation. Rather, there is a kind of a practical wisdom, and this arises when one has the if one's body and mind is trained properly. So the intuitively solution will come on the basis of the previous experience. But this approach to the solution does not like that the person is comparing all the past experience and choosing the correct out of them. What is actually, it is based on the feeling of the harmony and equilibrium one is actually one is having in the life, and getting back to this feeling of harmony propels the moral reasoning. So this is actually one of the debate which we have between the rationalists and virtue ethics, where the rationalists argue, okay, in order to overcome any kind of the situation of the crisis, we should have the set of the rules, and among that set of the rules, which is the best solution, we should apply it in order to get the solution, to get at the solution. Now, what the virtue ethics they ask, they says on the first place, what motivates us to get into the moral life? What motivates us to become a good person? So this
Saurabh, last couple of minutes, please. Okay. So that we will have a question answer also.
Sure.
You have done a wonderful topic.
Yeah, sure. So they say that this is actually based on the feeling of happiness and the harmony. So because there is a feeling of happiness and harmony, so this becomes the ground on the basis of which the moral reasoning occurs. So according to phenomenology and the feeling of harmony and practical wisdom is basically we feel at home in the world. When our body and mind feels harmony with the world around us, which is called as the tacit knowledge, and so we feel at home in the world. And whenever this harmony is disturbed, our body and the mind tries to get back to this feeling of harmony. Hence, reason and intellect has been used for experiencing and getting back to this feeling of equilibrium. So Gita emphasizes on the development of the sattvic body through meditation, moderation, and the various kind of the spiritual practices. So just not for the leading the life of pure contemplation, because it creates a kind of a happiness, samatva in the life. And whenever there is a crisis occurs in the life, or whenever there's kind of the disturbance, so we always want to get back to this feeling of happiness, of this feeling of a samatva, and for that that becomes the ground on the basis of which the moral reasoning and the finding of the wisdom actually takes place. So with these words, I end up my talk. Thank you all for listening.
Fantastic.